everyone, welcome to another episode of Nick's Nerd Network, and I'm Nick. And I am really excited for my special interview guest today. It is my good friend Dan Williams, and he was on a television show or a reality television show called Who Wants to Be a Superhero? So I'm excited. Let's talk to Dan, and I'm going to start you guys off with the intro from Who Wants to Be a Superhero? Hi everyone, I am here with my friend Dan, and we are going to be talking about one of his fun experiences in reality television. And I met Dan first at Dragon Con a couple years back, and we've been going to Dragon Con the last couple years, except for this year because it's not safe, and social distancing and all that nonsense. And I actually was just visiting you here recently.
Yeah, we had a good time in Orlando.
Yeah, fun. So Dan, tell us about this reality television experience you had.
Sure. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel. It was called Who Wants to Be a Superhero, and it was hosted by Stan Lee. I was on season 2 of that show.
The good season.
I'm not going to say that, but yes.
It's the season where I think they'd figured out where the show was going and ironed out more of it.
And then you could actually tell they had a budget, which was kind of fun. Because like the first season, they're like, we're going to go to a taco restaurant, and that's going to be the challenge. And you're like, what? Like this one, it started off with, you're going to be in a typhoon, and you have to battle the elements. And we're like, I was expecting to have to go buy something at a restaurant. And they're like, nope. So I was like, okay. It started off on a fun thing.
For those of you who have not seen the show or are interested in watching the show, the premise of the show is we have a bunch of people who are essentially cosplaying as superheroes that they made up or were directed to them by the producers. And
helped along. We'll say that.
Guided.
It was actually before cosplay. So it was kind of like before this whole craze started. Because it was probably 12 years ago now, I want to say. I think maybe 13.
Either in high school or just out of high school when that aired.
Oh, that makes me feel so old, but thanks. No, but it was a long time ago, so it was before people cosplayed, really. But basically the premise was, like, if you were, in fact, a superhero, what would your name be, what would your costume be, and what would your powers be? And so what you did is you became the superhero. So in the challenges, and for the whole entire time on the TV show, they referred to me as Parthenon because that was my superhero name. And so for probably 3 weeks of filming, I never heard Dan, which is my actual name, like, ever. And so it was super strange when I came home and people started calling me Dan again. I was like, oh, I forgot that's my actual name. Because I got so engrossed into what you were doing. It was fun. It was good.
So tell us a little bit about your character, Parthenon. A little bit of the backstory, a little bit of his powers, that sort of thing.
Sure. So Parthenon, I have always loved a couple different characters in the Marvel Universe. So like Mandarin, which is, people always think of the horrible Iron Man movie, which annoys me. Because the Mandarin's powers, each one has a different ring, and each ring does a special power. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. And then I loved the Infinite Gauntlet, right? So then each stone had a different thing. And I was like, I'm going to combine them together and then make my own kind of thing for that genre of it. Because my idea for the hero in general was that he was an archaeologist named Julian Powers. Jewel Powers, because I like it. Right. And then what basically happens is he was on a dig, and then he was underneath the ground trying to find a secret chamber, and then an earthquake occurred, and then it opened up like the fissure for it, and then he finally found like the inner chamber. Now there is a bad guy in mind, because I always think you can't have a hero without having a villain, because it doesn't really make sense. So I created mine along the same path as it. So he was always a treasure hunter that was on the same dig kind of thing. So then basically what happens is they each get 2 bracelets, and they were called an armaguard because it guards my arm. But it's like a bracelet that when they put on it, it kind of expands into like a gauntlet that kind of comes down your arm, right?
Okay.
So, and then each of the different things that they're looking for is they're both on a quest for power stones, because each stone gives you 1 power. Now, also a good hero needs a weakness, because I can't even think of one superhero out there that doesn't have a weakness, because he wouldn't have anything like nothing could actually stop him kind of a thing. So like, Superman has his kryptonite, Green Lantern has wood or the color yellow. It depends which Green Lantern you're talking about, but that kind of stuff, right? So my thing was that you could only use one power at a time. That was kind of it. And so I started off with like 2 or 3 gemstones. So each one gave me a certain power. And then the thing about it is the villain named Victor, he gets the other gauntlet. And so he's on the quest to get the other gemstones as well. Now, the weird thing is he actually starts ahead of me because he knows kind of what the gemstones are and the gauntlets because he was actually there for them, where I did not. But being an archaeologist, I was actually trapped in the room because Victor found the first one and thought that was all there was. So took it, caused an earthquake, and then caused me to get trapped in the room. And then inside of the room, I found the actual like runes. So I was able to translate the runes, solve the puzzle, and find the other bracelet and the other gemstones, which was able to get me out of it. And then from then on, it was just a race trying to find gemstones at that point.
It's you definitely did have one of the most fleshed out characters probably on the season. I mean, a lot of people like had their characters and were passionate about the characters, but then there were some characters that you could tell, like, especially if they were being led kind of by production of who their character was going to be. It was like, this is what they told me to be. Like,
yeah, like one of them we actually talked about. So we did a podcast. Well, not a podcast, more like a video cast. What would you even call that when we watch the show?
The viewing party?
Viewing party, there you go. So during quarantine, we thought it had been long enough, so we actually made our own viewing parties for season 2. So I got all the other heroes to come on. We would talk about the show. We would watch the episodes together. We would stop at the different breaks. People could ask questions. We showed behind-the-scenes stuff. We had one of the artists come on to actually like talk about how he drew the paintings. Because when we freeze frame or go to commercial, they always did like sketches of us. So it was super fun. But we did that kind of stuff. And during the contest or during the viewing parties, we had Trish come on. So Trish was Limelight on the show. And now she's a famous YouTuber, and she's crazy for doing reality shows, and she's a lot of fun, right? But she, on the show, didn't really have a passion for superheroes because she didn't really know about it yet. And so she was one of those that the hero came from the producers more than anything else. Because originally, she was Bubblegum Girl, which I asked her later off camera, and she doesn't even remember that. So I was like, what? I'm like, how do I know your original character, but you don't? And she's like, I don't know. And I was like,
party, she didn't remember a lot from this.
Yeah, so then she used to be Bubblegum Girl, and then they're like, no, we want you to be like the star, we want you to be like a superstar, so we're going to call you Limelight. And she's like, okay. So then they gave her this costume, and they actually gave her costume, and it was wonky. And so together, she and I and the person, Diffuser, so he was the cop, because we're all superhero people, so we helped her figure out and flesh out her character, and then by the time she actually made it to talking about her character, she had a fleshed out backstory and like all this kind of stuff. So she had something to go on at that point, but when she started, she really didn't. And then the other one that really didn't have a true passion for their hero was Mr. Mitzvah, because he actually started as something different, but didn't want to give away his rights because he was originally Peaceman. And Peaceman, he actually made music videos and made weird music videos under that thing, but when you sign onto the show, you had to sign away the rights. Right. So he didn't want to do that, so then he made up a whole Mr. Mitzvah thing. And then when I questioned him about his hero, he had no answers about anything, but he wasn't nice about it, so I didn't really want to help him, so then I just kept asking him questions.
He was definitely very direct, at least from the edit that he got.
It was fun. I actually met him in auditions, so I had a kind of interaction with him, and it was not pleasant then. So I was kind of like, when he was on the show, and I'm like, ugh, all right, let's do it. So, there's always that.
I think too, definitely, like knowing you, and especially knowing you before I realized, because I watched the show when it aired originally, and then I didn't actually know that you were on the show. And you brought it up and you mentioned it, and like everything clicked because like you were a twink at the time. You didn't have like the beard and all that stuff. So yeah. I was like, it all clicked, and I was like, oh my gosh, like how did I not see this or know this? Or because like, I mean, you have a very like a distinct personality that I would have remembered from the show. But I mean, it had also been like 10 years. But
right. It had been forever. Like I looked different, so people. Yeah. My beard is kind of a great disguise because a lot of people didn't really know it was me, so it was much more fun at the time.
But I can definitely tell that like the way at least you portrayed yourself, or the way that you were edited or portrayed on the show, is very different from who you are in real life, and you were in the mindset of that character, that superhero. Because I mean, in the show itself, you were a very like serious, calculated kind of a person, and I mean, you've said in the past too, where you didn't want to say or do anything that they could use to make you look stupid.
Nope. My whole plan of attack is I've watched enough reality TV shows that I knew how to work, and I used to do video production work, and that was actually what I taught at my school. So like, if I knew in my mind that if I never said anything that I didn't want to be on camera, then they couldn't have it. You know what I mean? So then I just was like, I am never going to cuss for the next 3 weeks, and I love to cuss, but I didn't cuss for 3 weeks. Like I made sure that I never wanted to be portrayed in like a bad light because I didn't want to give them an opportunity to do it. So
Yeah.
I tried my best not to do it. Yeah.
You took the Cameron Michaels approach to reality television.
I mean, yeah, I already knew how to do it. Like, and then it was fun because one time their camera broke, so I helped them fix it, like in the confessional room. And then I was kind of like, they're like, you shouldn't be touching our stuff. And I was like, I'm sorry, did you want me to fix your camera? Because this isn't Canon XL1, right? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, I have 3 of them at my school, and I fixed them all. You sure you don't want help? And they're like, yes, please. So then I would kind of break character for a minute and go help them fix stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the first day in the hero's lair, because it's just a big giant apartment, right?
Mhm.
I looked behind every single thing I could. I took paintings off the walls. I moved every chair. I looked everywhere I could possibly do because I was just like, there has to be clues or something. And I was just like, yep, it was wackadoo. Fun times though.
Well, and you never know too, because especially on Who Wants to Be a Superhero, some of the challenges, because you can't really, to a certain extent, make real superhero challenges. It could be something as simple as you thought you had the day off, and someone didn't wash the dishes, and nobody was heroic enough to wash said dishes, and you could end up on the chopping block or something like that.
Absolutely. But then you would never know it. And a couple of those things have happened during the show where it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then they're like, this is why you're in trouble. And we're like, what? Like, when did this even occur? And we didn't even find out about it until judging. And you're like, okay. So you didn't really have a defense for it, Because
And why didn't you save that poor dog tied to the telephone that was out of sight and probably not even there to begin with?
I'm convinced it wasn't there, actually. That was just a random challenge. And let me tell you guys, if you haven't seen the show. So we get to this place, and we're interviewing this guy who does not want to be interviewed. So it's an actor, and his whole plan is to throw us off our topic and get us to talk about anything else, right? And while they're doing that, they take our superhero vehicles, and there's like Jeeps, you know what I mean? Or like, I don't even know what they were. They were like black Blazers, okay? So then they take off all the wheels of our car, and then they're like, okay, you guys, you got to go because the villain's across town. Go there now. And so we go running out to the car, and then there's no tires. And we're like, what? So, like, everybody starts working on the tires, and I don't like getting dirty, just in general in my life, because I don't like dirty hands, right? And I don't know how to fix cars because I never took auto shop because I took it for one day, and they're like, they're going to get dirty. And I was like, I'm going to transfer to Spanish class. So now yo hablo español. Un poquito. And then, right. And so then I'm sitting there trying it, and there's only like one tire iron, and all the other heroes are running around, and I'm like, this does not make sense because this shouldn't be the challenge. You know what I mean? The challenge is not change a tire. And then so I started to stop, and I look around, and I'm trying to see what else is going on. And there's people that are obviously there that shouldn't be there. So one of the challenges where you had to help somebody carry boxes into a thing, and the other challenge was to help a grandma. And then when they filmed it, the grandma was mean and actually like yelled at all of us. But then they never showed any of that. And then in the final edit, she was like, "Oh, thank you for helping." When we were like, "What?" But in all this chaos going on, apparently there was a poster for a lost dog. And then this is the part that I don't understand. So like the car is here, the people with the cameras are standing here filming us, and the dog was behind the people with the cameras. Okay, so basic television production says you shouldn't go past the people with the cameras.
Right.
But it was on the other side of the street. So in their minds, they thought that we would see the poster, see the dog, connect the two, and then we should save the dog. And I was like, okay. And then they told us this way later. We were like, what? Like, how is this part of the challenge? Because there's so many like other random little challenges, and they never let us forget it. So like in probably 3 different episodes, they would always bring up the dog, and I was like, and then when it became like on the forums, because back then we didn't have like Facebook or anything, so we had the sci-fi forums, people would always make fun of it. They're like, how could you not save a dog and blah blah blah. And then when I was going out for appearances, people would ask me about this stupid dog, and I was like, I'm not even sure the dog was there. And like the dog was a trained dog anyway, so it's not like he was a random dog on the streets. I'm like, people.
How did the person who's missing the dog, who hung up the poster, not see that the dog was within view of the poster?
Ding. There's a lot of different stuff. I was just kind of like, all right, whatever. But it was an ongoing joke, and so it's been a joke for pretty much everybody on the show forever.
So, in terms of some of the people that you met on the show, who are some of the heroes that you've developed really good friendships with and kept in touch with over the years?
You know what? Almost all of them. It's almost all of them because they are wonderful people in general, and we had so many things in common. And then when you go through something like this, where you're thrown in together, it's like summer camp. You know what I mean? You make fantastic friends at summer camp, and then you're those friends for life. You know? So like Hygiena from the show, we talk all the time. Basura, wonderful. She has all the crazy posts on Facebook, and I just have to comment on them because it's great. You know what I mean?
She takes
The diffusers. Say that again.
So she takes the best pictures. I'm always seeing her photos and stuff.
Oh my God, yeah. Because, well, she's a model. So people draw her and put her in fun costumes and they do photography and sketches and like, she has a lot of stuff and it's all cool. And then the diffuser and I actually became really good friends. And so I went to go visit him in Austin, Texas. Like we got to stay at his house and it was just super fun. Like Trish, I went to stay at her house for once and it was wackadoo because she lived next to like Hollywood Superman, like the guy that was always at the Chinese theater. So we saw him in the hallway and I was like, hey, because he's like infamous for that kind of stuff. So it was fun, you know. There's a couple people that I just kind of lost touch with. But like Braid is one of my favorite people. I was mad that she didn't get to stay on the show longer because we actually met at auditions and like she's so nice. And like literally I got to hang out for like 3 days at the lair and then she was gone and I was like, so we
Hey,
talked.
she made it into the lair. On season 1, there's some certain people that didn't even get to make it to the lair.
Tell me about it. It was the only gay guy. We're talking about levity. I know. Well, I met him. Say that again?
It's a light in the loafers, am I right?
Right. So light that he floated away before he got in the lair. No. He is great, but like he is wonderful. I got to meet him a couple different times. And he's fabulous. Him and his partner are lovely. He actually works at Disney on a couple like the cartoons and stuff. And so I think right now he's working on Final Space. The one from Conan O'Brien.
Okay.
Have you seen it? Yeah.
So on the topic of gay superheroes on the show, I don't want to say that levity doesn't really count because we didn't really get to see much of him. They're basically the first episode. They were like, "All right, bye." Like, and that was one that was as close as we got. But you had, I don't want to give spoilers to anyone, but you had a sizable amount of time on the show. So what is it like for you being one of the first real gay superhero representations, whether it was a mainstream superhero or not, to be on television and be a part of the public eye and that sort of thing?
I had a feeling it was going to be what I thought it was going to be, like kind of a bigger thing, right? Because I know back then it was much more difficult when like you ever brought up the subject of that because it wasn't really as accepted as it is today. So when they started asking me about my superhero and stuff like that, I made sure that they knew it was going to be a gay superhero. So in my original logo, like I had a P for Paragon, but then Parthenon, right? But I had a little rainbow behind it because I was always wanted it to be part of my character.
Right.
However, I knew that I wanted it to be distinctly not an issue. So when I was talking to the producers and eventually Stan Lee and they asked me about it, I wanted to be a hero who like happened to be gay. So I didn't want to be a gay superhero because I didn't want to fly around and have like rainbows coming off of me, right? Because I wanted to start normalizing it to be, hey, I'm a superhero, so take me serious as a superhero. And by the way, I just happen to be gay because it shouldn't be a big thing. But back then it was a big thing, no matter what I did about it, you know?
Right.
And so it was crazy because as soon as the show started airing, people started kind of recognizing it. And episode 1, like 5 minutes into it, that's when they started asking me about it. And I'm like, yep, I'm a gay superhero and blah, blah, blah. I'm a hero who happens to be gay. And then they're like, oh. And then in one of the episodes, I actually won a challenge. And so I got to call my partner at the time. And so it was one of the first representations of like a gay on Sci-Fi Channel in general. So it was actually the first ever nomination for an award for it. So it was kind of a big thing because suddenly like I was nominated for awards and I was up against Project Runway, like Kathy Griffin and a couple other things. And then it's like, and me. And I'm like, yay. Just because I had a phone call. And during the phone call, I told my partner at the time that I loved him. That was it. You know what I mean? And it was one of those weird moments that it didn't even cross my mind that it was going to be a big thing. And then it turned out to be a huge thing. And it was weird being what it was. And then after that, people started messaging me and then they would tell me their stories and it helped people come out. And then it was interesting. And then it kind of came to a head because I have a friend now, and he's one of my good friends.
Mhm.
But before he knew me, he watched the TV show. And then he actually met me through a different friend. And so he's like, is that the guy that was in the show? And she's like, yeah. And then she made a point to go run after me and be like, hey, he knows you from the show. And cuts like a couple years later, because we became friends, right? And so he's floating in my pool. And then we were both drinking at the time, of course. And then he tells me about how he watched me on the show and how it helped him come out and how it helped him be okay with him being gay. And I was just like, wow, because it's one of my friends. Even before I knew them, I helped him, and then it was interesting.
Mhm.
And then I have like probably 50 different emails from people saying this kind of stuff, and it's touching because all I was doing was being myself,
Mhm.
but I did it in public. And this was before that was okay, you know? And I had to make sure that my whole family was good with it. My partner at the time, he really wasn't out. And so I had a long conversation with him about it. So, because I gave him the option to be like, not mentioned. You know what I mean? Like, because it was his life as well, you know? And so we had a big talk about it. And I was like, look, if you're not comfortable with being my partner, I'm okay with that because it's in public and I understand it. Just let me know, and then I will say that I'm single on the show. And then he thought about it for a week, and we had another conversation about it. And he's like, you know what? This is a good way to kind of accept who I am. And then, he told his family before the show aired and everything like that. So it was very much of a thing, you know?
I think too, I mean, at the time when I was watching the show when it first aired, like I really didn't think much about like being gay or anything like that. But there was like a sense of comfort there with seeing a character like Parthenon or like you on the show, where whenever you do see a gay person represented in media, especially at that time, there was like one very specific version of that. And not that there's anything wrong with
Right.
like those more flamboyant or feminine or sassy characters,
Sure.
it's harder for people to accept themselves when they don't see a version out there that they identify more with. And so
Right.
to see someone who was kind of grounded, serious, calculated, nerdy, like really excited about superheroes, you didn't see that kind of gay representation at the time. Usually it's all about like, and not to say that you're not any of these things, but it's normally like fashion, sassy, like,
Right. I totally get what you mean.
right.
Yeah.
And
Because
like
back then,
you are a lot of those things, but like all of who you were.
right, exactly. Like back then, I think we had Will and Grace, and I can't even like think of one other show. Like Project Runway is probably it because the fashion people on there. And other than that, we didn't really have anything on TV because being gay was not out. We had one superhero at the time, and it was like North Star, who was
Nobody really knew about him.
yeah, he had his own like mini series and where it was mentioned, but that was about it.
The
And
only
so,
representation I can think of in a television show was Doctor Who with Captain Jack
yes,
playing him, and he wasn't even like a true gay character. He was more like I guess by today's standards he would be considered like pansexual. Um,
yeah,
but I mean that was his whole thing is like I'll have sex with anyone who's attractive, like whether it be
hmm
male, female, anywhere between, an alien, anyone like. And to see that represented in this like very James Bond-ish, cool, like Indiana Jones kind of character, it's like that's something new that we've never seen before, and
yeah.
again another outlet or thing for someone to compare themselves to and feel like, okay, like maybe I do identify in this community, even if I don't check all the other boxes of what traditional gay representation is.
Because I think that Doctor Who, I think he started in like 2004 or 2005. So it was a couple years before mine, but I never watched Doctor Who yet. I've since watched it all. But I didn't get to see him anything like that. But then I knew there was other things out there, but they were never widely publicized or anything like that. But
Right, draw a lot of attention to it in fear of like backlash.
yeah. And so it was always kind of fun. But then being gay on the show was interesting because it made me stand out, which I didn't really think was going to happen. So like when they started doing um, like news things and they wanted people in Today's Show and then like other things kind of kept happening and it was like, oh, our fans really want to know more about you, so come on down. So I got interviewed for like a whole bunch of the gay magazines when it started happening. And I was just like, whoa, I wasn't prepared for that part of it, but it was very fun. It was nice to kind of share myself with people.
So, what about this reality television show experience with being on Who Wants to Be a Superhero? What kind of impact or like changes occurred in your life because of it, or like opportunities that you've gotten since doing the show that you don't think you would have gotten beforehand or without?
That's actually a really good question. Um, yeah, probably just doing publicity for it, because not much has happened after the show directly related to it. I mean, like sometimes I do panels and I do conventions and stuff like that, but something in me kind of knows that even if I wasn't on the show, I would still do it because I've always gone to conventions, and so like I feel like it's a natural progression anyway. So probably would have happened nonetheless. Yeah, I don't really know if anything particularly pointed has happened because of the show. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, like, I mean, I knew you because of like cosplay and costumes and things like that before
Yeah.
I realized you were in the show. And if any of you who are watching, we'll plug it at the end of the episode, but check Dan out for sure on Instagram. I'll include that information in the video. And also check out the viewing parties, because if you want to watch the show and hear live commentary about the show, it's the perfect way to watch it. And I'll leave links to Dan's YouTube channel with that information there.
And the good news is we don't talk over the episode. We wait till the breaks of the episodes. You can watch the whole thing and be fine.
Yep, they give you a nice potty break and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And a different rotation of some consistent people who they're talking, but a different rotation of people, whether it's people involved in the art process or people who are behind the scenes, or different characters and superheroes from the show.
And even somebody from season 1.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, we had feedback.
All right. So, what surprised you most about the reality television process?
What surprised me most? So I was a little bit familiar with the video production process in general, but I'd never been on a show. And so it was interesting on how much they kind of left up to chance more than anything else. Like, I was surprised that they didn't plan out more of it, because like normal reality shows, most of them are scripted. I hate to tell people that, but that's how it works.
Yeah.
And then they would throw us in these things, but they didn't really know what we were going to do and didn't really tell anybody else what to do. So it was very haphazard.
Mhm.
And then the interesting part is they had to make sense of it later in the editing room to figure out who was in the bottom, who was in the top, who won the challenge, who didn't win the challenge. Like, and then the criteria, I think, came after the challenges, which I always thought was weird, because I would have thought like, hey, whoever finishes first would win. But that's not the case. Like in the episode where we were at the school, like working with the kids, right? So I think, I can't remember this, but I kind of think they told us that it was a timed challenge, right? So we started working together, and then we were working really well, and the kids and they never show it, and it always looks like I'm talking over the kids, and I get it, so I'm like, whatever. But that's not what happened. Right. Parthenon hates kids. That's what it comes down to. No, not really. But funny thing is we finished first, and we offered to help other people, and like we were kind of chit-chatting all the time, and then we thought we won it, and then it turns out we didn't win it because it had nothing to do with anything, and then it was more of a popularity contest between who the kids liked and who didn't like.
Why did
like
you flip?
Right, because that's what I said before, and I'm like, I'm up against Hyperstrike, who was a trained circus acrobat, who literally in the middle of the classroom put a chair on top of a table and did a handstand on it, and I was like, what am I going to do? Like, how can I beat that? You know what I mean? So what I did was I balanced a chair on my finger, and they never showed it. It was super cool. I got claps, and all the kids were like, "Yay!" But they never showed it. So I was like, "All right." I was trying to show my super strength and my like balancing ability, but you know, it's whatever it is, kind of stuff like that.
Episode was the teacher's hair.
Random thing.
It looked like
Yeah.
a Simpsons character.
Yeah. And then the other part is like, because when you're in these challenges, like sometimes they had us redo the challenges because we saw them too fast, or they weren't challenging enough, or they just didn't make sense. And then the part that I really did not like about some of them is we specifically asked questions, they lied to us, and then we got in trouble for doing it. And I was like, because two of us, like in the one episode where we were being told what to do by Evil Stan, I stopped and I went point blank, what is this? Because this does not make sense. And I'm like, I would never do this kind of stuff. Do I have to do this, or can I say no? And they're like, no, you have to do it. And that was the director talking in my ear, and I was like, okay. So then, like, I did weird stuff, but then I always undid the weird stuff. Like, one of the things that I got so much flack for is I took this lady's cane and ran across the street with it, okay? They did not show me explaining what I was doing to the woman, being, I'll be right back, stand right here, I'll bring her right back. So then I put it across the street, they said cut, And then I took the cane and I ran it back across the street, and I was like, "Oh my God, thank you so much! Like, it's part of a show. I don't know what we're doing, but I really appreciate you, and like, thank you very much." And then they didn't show any of that. What did they show? Me stealing somebody's cane and putting it across the street and walking away. And I was like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So
And
that's the hard part of the reality show is like knowing that the general public will never know what actually happened, and then they assume that they know the truth, but it's not the truth. You know,
right.
that's probably the hardest part.
They have to piece together a story based off of inspired by the reality.
Yep. And especially when you're doing superhero stuff, like, you know what I mean? We, as the people on the show, kept going like, can we use our superpowers? Can we do it? Are you going to add special effects like if we do stuff? And then we never, and they would never answer us. So we kind of tried to do things like we were trapped inside of a box, like a wooden crate. And so Hyperstrike tried to do like a karate choppy thing. Nothing happened, and we were just kind of like, well, it was worth a try. We didn't know what we could do and what we couldn't do.
They had like 3 special superpower effects on that show.
Yep, and it was near the end when there actually it was the kids thing. It was in the kids' classroom because they were trying to show off for the kids, but which is the weirdest thing ever because the kids are seeing this, and then they add the special effects in later, and then like, how is this impressive to the kids? I'm like, I don't know.
Be impressed by the magic of editing.
Right? It's like, what are you doing? And I'm like,
You'll be impressed in post.
They'll be. Hopefully. Yeah.
So that's really all the questions that I had for you, Dan. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about the show?
The only thing I think about the show is, like, a lot of people always ask me, is there going to be a season 3, or was there, or what was it? And they did one version with kids in England, but it went horrible. Like, horrible. I watched maybe 2 episodes, and it was hard to watch. Because they're, like, yelling at the kids for doing weird things, and I'm like, ooh, this is...
Reality TV with kids is hard, like...
No, because you can't be mean to them, because then you just start crying and, like, go in a corner. And you're like, ooh. But I was thinking...
edit, it could ruin their lives, like...
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I always wonder, like, if that show came out now, I think it would even be a bigger hit than it actually was then, because we, as a, like, whole body, I guess you could say, are much more, like, into superheroes because of all the Marvel movies and all the thing like that. It's now became more mainstream. Before, it was more underground, you know? Like, when I said, oh, I read comic books, people are like, comic books? Ugh. Now they're like, oh, yeah, Avengers, and they can tell you all about Captain America and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, interesting. So it's becoming much more mainstream. So I was wondering if it came back now, if it wouldn't be, like, a bigger hit.
All right, well, thank you so much for being here today, Dan. I was really excited to talk to you about this show because it's had such a huge impact on my life and involvement in like superheroes and like the idea of cosplay and things like that. And also, it's been super cool to get to know you and then also find out you were on the show that I honestly had forgotten about for 10 years. And
yeah, people did.
again, and the viewing parties got us through quarantine, and it made it really interesting and fun.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for having me. And it's been fun. See, I'm glad we became friends before you did it, so then we could actually be friends. That makes it more fun.
And friends.
It's fine now. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We'll have you back for more discussions and other topics not related to reality TV and more cosplay and fun nerd stuff. And thanks so much for watching. If you really like that video, please like and subscribe, comment. We love to hear feedback. By we, I mean me, because I'm the only one here. Also, please check out some of Dan's social medias. And thank you so much, Dan, for being here. You can find him on Instagram, or you can click on the link in the description of the video and you can see the streaming if you want to watch Who Wants to Be a Superhero with the characters breaking in between intermissions to talk about the show. Please check out Dan's YouTube channel. The link is in the description, and you can watch all of Season 2 with the commentary from people who were on the show, Dan's friends, himself, and others.